Hi, my name is Hannah, and today we will interview Robert. Originally from Canada, he has spent the last 5 years traveling the world and working remotely as a digital nomad. He also runs a digital nomad forum with over 13,000 members. He is also a professional Upwork coach. Upwork is the world's largest remote work platform. Today he gives us his view on key trends as we emerge into a post-pandemic world.
This podcast channel is about you, successful international entrepreneurs, successful expats, successful investors. Sponsored by HCJ.tax.
And we're live. Robert, how are you today?
Hey, Derren, I am well. I'm happy to be chatting with you. How's it going on your end?
Pretty good. It's been a while, so thanks for sharing some of your time. For those who may be watching or listening, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Robert O'Crook. I'm Canadian, born and raised. I spent more than 3.5 years traveling the world and working remotely as a digital nomad. In context to our conversation today, I run the Digital Nomads Forum. It's a 13,000 plus member Facebook group for remote workers and digital nomads. And I'm a professional Upwork coach. Upwork's like the world's largest remote work platform. So I kind of live and breathe the remote work and digital nomadism lifestyle and community. And yeah, that's a quick little bit about me.
Fantastic. Thank you. And therefore, that means that you have some measure of authority and perspective as we jump off into this topic. So one of the obvious outcomes of what's happening right now with pandemic and everything is the rise of remote work. And previously it was seen like a fringe activity, but now it's definitely part of the mainstream discussion. What are your thoughts as to what's happening right now? Keeping it open.
Sure. So I think what's been interesting as someone who's been in this kind of world of remote work before all this COVID craziness was happening is that it was very evident that it's kind of looking like it's kind of on this like hockey stick curve. And for people who aren't familiar with that, basically means things are kind of ramping up, but soon will be, crazily ramping up. And so people are already transitioning over the last few decades more and more into remote work, and COVID has actually just kind of accelerated the process. It's like throwing gasoline into the fire and has been speeding up something that's been happening in the background as well. So for all the people who are already working, doing something on a computer or on the phone, well, then they're for sure having explored remote work at this point. For other people, though, who have been doing other types of work where they haven't been doing something that's traditionally done remote or able to be done remote, they've actually also then been looking at, is there something I can do from home that's not normally what I would be doing? But that'd be my zoomed out view. Is it's really just sped up something that's been happening anyways, but now some people don't have a choice if they want to earn a living.
Gotcha. And I agree with that. And in so many ways, the pandemic has been a catalyst, not creating anything new, but accelerating pre-existing trends.
Yep.
And another trend, that we've seen that has been accelerated has been what some of us would term economic nationalism. So we've seen over time, borders have not been getting more and more open, but the opposite, they've been closing.
Yeah.
Now that seems to be like some headwind in terms of the whole nomad, location independent driver perspective or movement. How do you reconcile those two?
I don't know if I've been able to reconcile them yet, but it's actually been a concerning topic for sure because, for example, where me and you met in person was in Bali in Indonesia, and that's literally a large entire island that's fueled by more than 90% of tourists dollars. And so that they don't have that income now. And the whole idea of this digital nomadism thing is that you can kind of bounce around and hop around and be where you want to. And you just simply logistically can't do that easily at the moment. And it's really, to be honest, it's a bummer. And I understand the reasoning behind it. People want to, protect themselves and stay safe and healthy. But at some point, what I'm wondering is, people keep mentioning, things going back to normal. And then other people are saying there is no normal. This is a new era or new thing we're in. And it's interesting because at the beginning of this, I was thinking, well, yeah, all the countries will just open back up normally and things will go back to normal. But it's happening much more slowly than I anticipated. And I actually am starting to have creeping concerns that the openness for travelers to enter into countries might actually be more restricted than it was before COVID, even after COVID has officially fully kind of gone on its way. So that's a real bummer. And I'm hoping that's not happening. I think what that will do then is for countries that are open to having more or less restrictive kind of laws about visitors, and this of course will then attract, I guess, the digital nomads and remote workers, because people want to travel. I think is something I've learned in the last few years. It doesn't matter actually where, the grass is always greener on the other side. Wherever they're living, this is the worst place, or they're bored of it or whatever, and there's another place they want to go there. So if you can't go to this place because the border's closed and this border's open, then we might see kind of a natural funneling effect happen from people in this lifestyle. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Right. So you seem to be leaning towards the camp that's saying, hey, this is the new normal, so don't expect a return to 2019. That may be in the rearview mirror, right? So
yeah, all I'd add on to that is I'm not attached to either outcome. I prefer things to go back to the way they were in terms of being open, and in fact, I would like them to be more open and easier for people to go between countries. But as you said, what's going to actually happen, nobody knows. I certainly don't know. I do have a preference, but who can say, right?
Right. So if it is, and again, we don't know, but if it is that things are less open than they were before, what should a location-independent person be doing to prepare for that?
Well, still what they've been doing in the past when they want to travel. So as a digital nomad or remote worker, if you're considering going to a new country, then at some point for most people, there is a stage of research where they're just looking into what are the rules and laws and regulations about me from whatever country I have a passport from, visiting this place. Do I just show up and enter and they let me stay for 1 to 3 months, or do I have to fill in some sort of form in advance? So I think that this step is even more essential potentially in this post-COVID era, especially if all the tourism and kind of immigration laws, if these have all kind of changed or been jumbled about, then we really want to make sure we're finding out the current information to see, hey, can I actually go there? And so some of the best ways for people to do that, sure, you can Google things, but Google is kind of this black hole of multiple information sources. And so one of the easier ways, not necessarily the most accurate way either, though, is to maybe come into a Facebook group like mine, where you can actually ask people who've recently, even that day or that week, gone through the exact same border or steps that you're about to. And if you're intelligent about how you collect that information, you don't just listen to the first person who replies, and you collect, a few people's responses in real time. That's arguably one of the easiest ways to figure it out without giving yourself a major headache as to, can I visit this country? What are the laws? That's what I would say.
Gotcha. And so in a way, well, depending on how long this disruption lasts or whether it's more of a long-term thing, the whole idea of short-term tourism seems to be floundering. The idea of going around, because by the time, you get a test or you quarantine for 14 days, it's not exactly a weekend trip like how it used to be, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I've seen is destinations, and this again predated this pandemic. Destinations have been getting a bit picky. The case study being like Thailand, right? They have been deliberately putting policies in place to discourage the so-called backpacker in favor of someone who is, I guess they use the term VIP because they have VIP visas and stuff like that. So I guess higher income earners. Do you see those two things as being a trend worth thinking about or observing?
Well, from a governmental perspective, I'm sure they need to be
Mm,
observing it. From an individual perspective, I kind of
mm,
feel like those, see, Thailand's still such an open place, but other places, if they're going to choose to restrict themselves to only allow the higher income earners to travel or travel more easily, then what we can assume will happen is then therefore more of those people will be there and less of the lower income earners will be there. And so I guess all I'll say is you need to check in and ask yourself, what kind of people do I want to be around? Do I want
mm,
to be around the full spectrum of income earners? Or maybe you're in business mode and you want to take your 6-figure business to 7 figures and you want to be surrounded by people who are crushing it, then maybe that would be favorable for you.
mhm,
Uh, Personally, I've always enjoyed in travel being surrounded by such diversity of people from all walks of life. And I
mhm.
imagine I would like to keep traveling in that way. But it's a question to ask yourself, who do I want to be surrounded by? And is this location somehow funneling or pulling a certain group more so than another one?
Okay, gotcha. I get that point about diversity, and I know it's premature, but you've been observing this for a while, and we're saying that this situation, this pandemic, has just accelerated certain pre-existing trends. And with that in mind, which destinations you think are going to be more attractive going forward? Your guess?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, like specifically.
yeah.
Okay. Well, probably the locations that are already considered the biggest digital nomad hubs in the world. So places like Medellin in Colombia, Bali, Chiang Mai, and a few other places in Thailand, Lisbon in Portugal, and there's a handful of others. These are some specific examples, though. These places all have huge tourism industries going on, regardless of the digital nomad thing, because
Yeah.
the digital nomad thing is still not this massive, economy changing factor when it comes to tourism, but it is becoming so. And so these places were already top destinations for digital nomads because of other reasons, which were basically cost of living, quality of living in terms of the beauty and geography and things to do, food and culture and infrastructure, basically reliable internet and whatnot. So that's all still there.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, things are now cheaper because there's no tourism, so everyone's fighting for tourist dollars. So the biggest thing will just be the rules, really. Is it accessible for someone to get there? Can I fly? Can I book my plane ticket? Can I get to the border and get in without hassle? That will literally be the strongest factor at the moment, because all the other factors of what makes a great place for remote workers and digital nomads, they haven't actually, inherently changed, except I would say then, so I mentioned culture.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is going to be comprised both of the locals who are there and the foreigners and visitors who are there. So if it's only locals all of a sudden and now there's no foreigners, then that's different, because some places you travel to in the world are a lot of fun because they attract people like yourself. So for example, I'm an avid mountain biker. There are places in the world that are these, mountain biking hubs, and that's a lot of fun to get to hang out with all these people who are into the same thing you are. But at the same time, sometimes you want the diversity. So anyways, there's some thoughts on that.
And what do you think about initiatives like like Estonia, Bermuda, Barbados. I know it's early days. They're still kind of ironing out certain parts of it, but generally they, what they propose to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Like, and I guess so you're referring to, so for people who are listening, kind of
Yeah,
these countries that are starting to offer potentially like these digital nomad visas or
correct.
passports, even where,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, where you can kind of have your banking and taxes in a different country with potentially more favorable rules and laws. So ultimately, hopefully, you might reduce or minimize the amount of taxes you pay legally. I think this
hmm
is like a global opportunity because I've heard people talking about this Estonia e-residency now for a couple of years. I
hmm
haven't met anyone though who's blown me away and been like, "Oh yeah, I did it, and this is how awesome it is."
yeah.
Seems like, as you said, all of this stuff still totally in this early days. Kind of nothing seems concrete, at least from my experience perspective so far. But is there a demand for it? Absolutely. There's,
Mm.
I'm fortunate enough to be a Canadian national, and that's a great passport to have in terms of accessibility to travel in other countries. But from a tax perspective, and there's certainly other countries with worse taxation than Canada,
hmm
there are other places that have better tax laws than what we have here. And so for myself and for other people in those countries where countries are taxing quite a bit of your income, we are actively always looking for, is there a country I potentially could get a new passport in, could have a bank account, could file a corporation in, and legally have my income go through that country and pay less income tax, basically legally. Is there somewhere we can do that? And I know this is something you're basically an expert on, and the answer is yes, if you make enough money and you want to, there's some things you have to do. You need to probably hire someone to help you, unless you really want to spend a ton of time researching things yourself. So there is a group of us, a large group of people who are looking for something. Maybe for those people who aren't, seven figure earners or more. Of course, it's easy for them to hire someone. But if you're maybe in this like, high five figures or six
Yeah.
figures
hmm
income, that's kind of like a little bit of a gap. And I would say these people, which would include myself, we are looking for kind of a more favorable
Mm.
country when it comes to taxation and their laws.
Right. So I guess to kind of like follow through on what you're saying, I would put them in like in two categories because there's immigration laws, and then there's the whole tax and corporate structure sort of
Yep.
environment. So in terms of immigration, so I'm thinking like what Bermuda and Barbados are proposing, which is like a so-called digital nomad visa or some
Mm-hmm.
equivalent thereof, which is basically a long stay permit. So
Yep.
rather than you just go in for 14 days or whatever, they say come stay for a year. So from an
Yep.
immigration perspective, we make that possible. Whereas what Estonia, Portugal, or whatever, some of the other jurisdictions propose is, well, yeah, we can have a conversation about staying here from an immigration perspective, but what we're actually pitching is using, and perhaps less Portugal. Well, yeah, leave Portugal because Portugal is like a hybrid, but like Estonia. So Estonia is saying, well, come and set up your company with us. And
Yep.
e-residency is a bit of a misnomer because we're not talking about immigration. So we're really targeting people from like within the EU or maybe another advanced economy that can get the immigration stuff sorted on their own. What we're proposing is that you can bank with us, you can set up your company with us, and we have a slightly favorable corporate tax structure to make it
Yep.
attractive for you to do that. And then Portugal is kind of like in between the Estonia and between the Barbados, where they do give the long stay visas, and not just for Europeans, but for Americans, Canadians, Aussies, Kiwis, whatever. And they have some attractive tax structures that
Mm-hmm.
would incentivize someone to spend time there. So,
Yep.
so I guess there's a lot going on in that landscape. Portugal has been around for a while. Estonia has been around for a while as well. but they're using the opportunity to kind of like promote themselves in the midst of what's going on. Now, another thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, right? So, all right, remote work. That, most people, I would say most people really don't have the luxury of working remotely. For
Okay.
most people, they are more or less constrained to a specific location and time, given what it is they do for a living, right?
Okay.
So there are people that I imagine are now seeing the opportunity and hearing the buzz about work from home, work from home, work from home, or
Yeah.
have been dislocated or have been negatively impacted by all the quarantine and social distancing rules and want to transition into a business where they can work remotely. Now, when you explore that space, that becomes a minefield, because every time you turn on
Yeah.
YouTube and you're watching a 30-minute video and you get 6 or 7 people pitching at you, whether it's drop shipping or coaching or high ticket selling and stuff like that. What do you see as the genuinely attractive opportunities for someone who is looking to transition into remote work versus what is kind of like overhyped and probably not what it appears to be?
Okay, so you already touched on some of the bigger ones, like some of the ones that I would say are not what they appear to be. And I'll back this up by saying some people make great money in these niches, but in general, it appears to me that it's a very small percent. And so these would include things like, yes, drop shipping, multi-level marketing, affiliate marketing is kind of getting in there. Amazon FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. Okay, these are some pretty hot topics that you'll see ads for when you start looking into the world of remote work. People will describe these, it's so easy to get into, you make lots of money. One of the things all those are going to have in common is at some level, you're basically an entrepreneur in these roles. You are totally responsible for everything. And so entrepreneurship is amazing, but is it the logical first step for someone who's looking to make a manageable first step or small first step into the world of remote work? Maybe not. If you've got that fire in your belly, you've got this genius idea for an app or something, great, go build it. If you're spinning tires, you're like, I don't know what to do, it might not be helpful to spend more time and money spinning tires even further, trying to figure out a half fleshed out entrepreneurial idea that's based on someone else's model. We just mentioned a few of them. So if we're just saying don't be an entrepreneur for now, there's basically 2 paths I often see for people. One is remote work with a regular employer. Okay, so this could be literally like a company like McDonald's. They get 1 million customer service emails. They could hire someone. We would call them a customer service representative or a virtual assistant maybe to answer those emails. Okay, so that's going to be done obviously 100% remote. And that's going to have lots of things in common with a regular job from McDonald's. If you're actually there flipping burgers, you're going to have low pay. You're not going to have great benefits. The work's probably not very rewarding. So those jobs they're there. So you can already do crappy jobs remotely. Okay. So that would be like the easiest step is if you're in a crappy job, then you can do a crappy job remotely. We shouldn't do this, but just to compare apples to apples. And then that will scale obviously to good jobs. So there'll be, interesting remote work in niches you find personally interest in. So for example, I'm very much into yoga and meditation. I am going to get a lot more fulfillment out of any work I do, whether it's as simple as answering customer service emails or as complex as building a website or designing a poster or something more challenging with a specialized skill set. If I'm doing that for a yoga business, well, no matter what I'm doing for them, I'm going to like that a lot more than doing anything for McDonald's. So traditional companies working remotely for them is one path. It's completely legit because it's just another job. But the big difference here is you can do it remotely. So that might be pretty advantageous if you've never worked remotely. The other path is kind of the freelancing route, and that's kind of the area that I help people out with a lot. And freelancing is just saying, hey, I have these skills, whether it's the exact same things. I can build websites, I can design posters, I can answer your customer service emails, any of these things that you could do, and then finding a business owner to pay you for doing those things. So remote work platforms, the biggest one right now, it's called Upwork, for example. It's basically like Uber. Uber connects drivers and passengers, or Airbnb connects properties and renters. So Upwork connects businesses and freelancers. And it just has this app and website where you can message each other, and the money is handled there. And it makes it easy to connect with one another. And this is another very legitimate avenue, because there's no get rich quick here. There's no shortcuts. There is honest pay for honest work. You're still trading time for money. You are working on usually an hourly or fixed price basis. You're delivering something tangible each time. So these paths, freelancing in any capacity or doing it through remote work platforms is awesome. And so is working remotely for regular companies. These are the more kind of, I would say, honest, ethical, straightforward approaches compared to a lot of these other get rich remotely or earn money online, work from home opportunities. Well, if they're wording themselves like that, that's probably a red flag. If it's just regular work done remotely to some degree, then that's going to be a good starting point. Now, the challenge obviously then with working remotely for a regular employer or then as a freelancer is how do you get hired in either case, right?
Gotcha. Okay, so I think that's a pretty comprehensive overview, and
that was a lot, yes.
of the opportunities that exist right now, and for those who intend to transition, what they should be looking for, and the elements, for the platform like your Upwork, what tends to work, what doesn't tend to work. So yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think this is exactly what we're looking for.
Thanks, Derren.
All right, great. And